Hey, it's Alan. I want to welcome a very special guest today on this episode of Pipeline to Profitability. Today, I have with me TJ Harnett. Now, TJ is a home service trade business coach and trainer. TJ has been in the space since 1994 and has held nearly every position possible on the trade side prior to becoming a coach. He has done the work, experienced the challenges, and enjoyed the successes. From technician to owner and sales to install, he's been in the trenches. Today, he uses his servant's heart approach to help businesses in the trades to improve and grow, and do so profitably with amazing cultures. Flywheel Coaching Group is a labor of love, and he's grateful to do what he gets to do for a living. He resides in Pennsylvania with his family, enjoys the outdoors, music concerts, and warm water vacation spots in his free time. Welcome, TJ. And today, I really just want to, as we're both coaches in this space, I really just want to go where the podcast takes us, and anything that you can provide to my listeners, being HVAC, plumbers, electricians, that's going to make the industry better. So over to you, buddy.
Perfect. Thanks for having me. Yeah, no, by all means, any chance we have to share and serve and care for others, game on. Let's do it. Let's have fun.
Yeah, so I was introduced to you by our mutual friend, Billy Stevens, who's already been on the podcast. And Billy is an amazing individual who I believe is one of the smartest guys in the industry. And any recommendation from Billy is for me is a good contact. So over to you, buddy. So where are we going to go with this today? What can we do to help?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, hey, starting with Billy's a great thing, right? As you said, one of the smartest guys in the space for sure. I kind of like refer to him a little bit as like the silent assassin, right? Because he's such a good, effective listener. But when it's time for him to talk, man, I make sure that I turn on the ears and I pay attention, because there's usually some gold that falls out of what he has to say. But yeah, was fortunate enough to grow a relationship with Billy over the last number of years. Continue to do so. Continue to really appreciate his opinions and feedback for me, and then also try to support what he's doing over there with Sarah, and go from there. So yeah, he's one of the fun ones.
He is indeed. Now, you've mentioned Sarah, and I talk about Sarah at every opportunity, and maybe we can discuss a little bit about how Sarah is revolutionizing the industry, and what you've learned from working with that amazing product, and whether you utilize that in your coaching moving forward.
Yeah, so I am going through the university or the academy for Sarah to become, certified. But to your point, when Billy first introduced it, I was like, man, it's like voodoo, right? Like it was so different from what we were used to. And it took me, it took me a few weeks to really wrap my head around what was happening and what they were doing, until we've always done it this way kind of died in my head. And I was like, hey, wait a minute. Now, like once I really wrapped my mind around what was happening and the way that it works, I became, a pretty big fan of the platform itself. Right now, like any other software, as time goes on, there's going to be things they're going to add. There's going to be layers to the onion, so to speak, that they're going to make it more holistic. But in the way that they do what they do, as far as the efficiency side of things, and constantly tracking how long everything in a business takes, so that we no longer have that variable of what is your team's efficiency, right? Every other CRM is based off of, well, what's your billable hour? But your billable hour is based off of your efficiency. So if you don't know your efficiency, you're charging the wrong price. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you could agree with this as a coach, is one of the things that we uncover is nobody knows their efficiency. Like there's maybe 5% of the space truly tracks things enough to actually know what they're doing and how they're doing it. And if you don't, then your billable hour is wrong. And so
I agree, TJ. I'm really glad you entered this conversation, because I've been preaching this for years, not just in the companies that I've founded and grown, but the hundreds of companies I've worked with and coached myself. And does 5% of the industry know what their actual billable efficiency is? I don't even think it'd be that high. And look, that was one thing I always said in all of my previous training and podcasts. If you can improve your efficiency by 1%, you improve your profitability dramatically. Now, according to Billy, and I don't really have any facts to back this up, but we used to always aim for a 50% efficiency, meaning if we pay our guys for 8 hours, we would bill them for 4, but we could never hit that. Now, if we would have hit a 50% efficiency, our profitability based on the rate that we were charging would have been through the friggin' roof. But I reckon we were closer to 40%. Now, Billy claims the industry average is 38%, but in his own company runs it closer to 90% because of the software. So maybe there's a segue here into you expand on what I've just realized.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, truth be told, I think 38% is even high. Realistically, what I've uncovered is on average, it's about 2.4 hours a day get billed out for every 8 hours worked. That's just the math, right? When I dig in and run the reports of Johnny worked this many hours, and then I take all of Johnny's tasks and add up the time and the tasks that were sold, and this is for a relatively decent performing person, right? This isn't the guy that's at a 20% conversion rate or whatever. This is a halfway decent performing technician. You're in that 2.4 to 3.2 billable hours for every 8 that you work, which is, terrible. Like there's really not another way to put it. It means, 70% of your time, you're not actually really generating much, right? And so, where the misunderstanding comes from is, make no bones about it, Billy's team didn't magically just become infinitely better at what they do. They just got better at how they charge for what they do. Right. So I wouldn't say that his team is out there installing capacitors far more, quickly and efficiently or whatever than everybody else's team. He just changed the way that he charges for it so that he's charging for 85 to 90% of the time that his team is on the clock. That's where the difference lies with Sarah versus, and look, if there wasn't a ton of value to it and a ton of legitimacy to it, would dynamic pricing have magically popped out of nowhere inside of the other large CRM that's in our space, right? Would they have magically all of a sudden, pricing was use the wizard, do this, do that. And then Sarah really took hold, and then all of a sudden, boom, here's this new feature that we're going to call dynamic pricing, when really all we're doing is we're switching over to a margin pricing model, which is what Billy's doing, to be able to, compete, if that's something that folks want to be able to follow and pay attention to.
Yeah, look, the thing is, I mean, when I was introduced to Billy probably 4 years ago now, and I reached out to him, and he was that sort of guy that from Australia. I'd never met the guy before, and he took my call, and then we started to chat and started to share ideas. But even before I'd met Billy 4 years ago, I used margin pricing based on and exactly what Billy has in the Cirrus software. I made up a spreadsheet that could calculate what margin we were trying to achieve. For us, it was always around a 40% margin, a 50% margin based on an overhead of around 40%. And I realize now that our profit wasn't high enough. So we started to aim for 55 to 65% gross margin in the drain space. And we were able to get that. We really struggled with all the other services, but and that's how we managed to get a good profit across the board, was because we were doing a lot of trenchless work, drains, trenchless. But when I started to calculate price bigger jobs using my margin calculator, which I have shared with a few other companies, it was friggin' brilliant. We were spot on, and we always achieved that margin as long as we were accurate in getting the materials right, getting the labor hours right, and knowing what things cost. So, but we could never get that into our price books because it just didn't match, you know. So, but yeah, I think margin pricing and the way that Sarah actually does it is friggin' brilliant, and I love everything about it. So tell me, TJ, we've had conversations, and I'd like to maybe explore this a little bit. Maybe it's the right platform, maybe it's not. But we talk about, we're both coaches that have actually done it.
Yep.
You know, we've run businesses, we've been out there, we've run calls, I grew my company to about 100 staff. We had about 75 trucks on the road. And as a coach, I feel that I have the experience, and most of my experience comes from all my failures, and I've had plenty of them. So maybe this might be an opportunity, and then some, and I think failure is it's what helps us to get stronger, right? I'd like to hear your view on the coaching space and currently what's happening at the moment. And I just disappeared. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, TJ.
So let me get my diplomat hat out.
Yeah, look,
so it's not
diplomatic
to
or
feed
not,
anybody's
just
cornflakes, right? No, look, at the end of the day, the coaching space gets more and more crowded by the day, right? There's new resources, there's new folks, there's no shortage of choices in this coaching space. However, and I've said this many times, and I'll continue to say it until I don't believe that it's true anymore. As crowded as the space is, it's still really underserved. And what I mean by that is, anyone who thinks that we get into coaching for the money has never done it. Because if it was really about income and money and things of that nature, man, I would have never left sales and operating, like, ever. But I think some folks are in coaching for short-term financial gain. To each their own, so be it. I'm not going anywhere. It took me 27 years, 28 years to get where we're at today, which is still nowhere near even close to where I would like to be. But I'm not going anywhere. This trade space, plumbing, heating, air conditioning, electric, garage door, you fill in the blank with this space, has come to mean so much to me personally that I will serve it until I'm not capable anymore. So I'm not ever
That's
leaving.
fantastic.
Right. I think that there are a lot of folks that view it as an opportunity to make money, and they're right. There is opportunity for that. But I know I get really frustrated when I see, like, on social media, there's all these different groups, right? Whether it's, Avengers or Profit Rocket or whatever these groups are that are on in these social media pages. And there's a lot of really good information in those groups, but man, there's a lot of really detrimental information. Somebody will ask a question, and all of a sudden they'll get hit with 18 answers, and not a single one of those answers actually seeks to understand anything more about what was asked. they just give this canned answer that might very well relate to the person giving the answer, but is so irresponsible of an answer to give to the person who asked the question, because you don't have any background information as to know what perspective they're asking that question from. And so I get really frustrated because as a coach, we have like one major responsibility, and that is to help, not to harm. And the minute that you don't understand that helping people, not harming people, is your number one responsibility, you shouldn't be in the space.
I agree. You're 100% right about all the groups, and there's a lot of information being thrown out there, and there is a lot of predators out there as well that are preying on the weakness. And business is tough, to run a plumbing, electrical, air conditioning company is not hard. And I look, my belief is that at least half, maybe not if more, of the businesses out there should not be in business. They should not be working for themselves. They should be working for someone else. And I've found that in my coaching. I started my my service contracting business, let's call it 20 years ago. And in Australia, we had no best practice groups. And really, there was no coaches in the space for in the maintenance and the service. So I started to reach out to the US and come across the likes of Matt Michelle, David Heimer through Service Roundtable. I spent a little bit of time in Nexstar, met some great people there, and then decided that I wanted to have those best practices groups in Australia. So that's where I decided to take up the coaching space myself. And the only way to get coaching, excuse me, in Australia was to start my own. It wasn't the direction I really wanted, but I thought there was a need for it. And I'm about the industry, and I feel that Australia has been it was tough to have a best practice group, especially when the media attacks you and thinks that you're out there to rip people off. And look, I've got a story to share, and I've shared with you part of that. Now is not the time because I'm still dealing with some stuff that has to be taken care of. But I didn't get into the coaching space for the reason that a lot of other coaches get into it. I got into it because there was a need, and the industry needed best practices. But after meeting you and talking to you, I know you've got into the industry for all the right reasons, and you're right with what you're saying. There is people that should not be in the coaching space because they're doing it for the wrong reasons. I'd like to keep going with that because, we know who the good operators are out there, and we know the operators that are probably shouldn't be doing it. And this is a platform where I want to share best practice and what is going to help our fellow contractors. So maybe we might, I'd love to hear your thoughts, TJ, on what is some of the things that our audience can do to better improve their business besides using products like Sira and maybe knowing their financials a little bit better, getting a really good coach. I think we've touched on those things. So what else can our fellow contractors, which we're both trying to help, what else can they do that's going to better improve their business?
So there's a couple things, and it's a great question that I think you'll agree we get asked a lot. Number one in today's world is quit paying attention to everybody else. What someone else is doing doesn't really matter, nor does it have any bearing on your business. There's so many things that go into, your market, the trades that you're offering, whether you're, heavily replacement based or heavily service based or heavily maintenance based or what. There's just so many different things. So stop grading yourself against other people and start grading yourself against who you used to be. So that, am I better today than I was yesterday? And if the answer is yes, good, keep going. the answer is no, then ask yourself why. Number two is pay attention to your culture. And culture isn't pinball machines and coffee machines and video games for the guys to play on. Culture is your guys knowing that they have, and your gals, I apologize, ladies, but it's the guys and gals on your team knowing that they're allowed to be human and be on your team. They're allowed to have the freedom to fail. They're allowed to have things in their personal life that affect them. And instead of us screaming at them, we're going to come alongside them and say, hey, you're seeming a little out of character. Talk to me about what's happening for you right now. Right. So culture, I think many times gets misunderstood as to what it actually is. And so where do those two things come from? Right. Is there are two pieces of what we refer to as foundational five at Flywheel, which are core values and a mission statement. Many people get tied up in the fact that these are like words on a page or whatever. We have to have it and you check it as a box. Stop doing that. Your core values have to be that. They have to be who you are, what's most important to you and your team, what are the things you're not willing to ever bend on, and what are things that people have to bring along as a shared belief or be willing to attain the belief of to be a part of your team. And then why does your company exist? It's not to make a profit. It's not to fix plumbing. It's not to fix heating and cooling. Why does your company exist? Fixing plumbing, fixing heating and cooling, electric. That's what we do. It's not why we do it. And so when we really truly have core values that are who we are and a mission statement that says why we exist, it's much easier to create a culture where everyone feels valued, where everyone takes up the torch kind of thing and runs with stuff, where people feel safe, where people are cared for. And it's also way easier to put the blinders on and stop paying attention to what's happening over here, because we might know that regardless of what we see on the big screen, there's absolutely no way that anybody could get loved better than they're going to get loved by being a part of our team. And so core values and mission statement, I think, are probably the two most underrated things in business today.
I agree. Look, I spent quite a few years doing, you've heard of EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Gino Wickman, one of my closest friends, Daniel, who is the Australian arm of, excuse me, of EOS, taught me many years ago exactly what you said, the importance of vision and culture. And yeah, you're 100% right in that area. And I think irrespective of the size of the business, I mean, we work with, I don't work with that many one truck companies. Most of the smaller companies I work with would probably be 3 trucks, 5 trucks, but we've both been there, right? So we, I think with our experience, we can work well with smaller companies as well as the bigger companies. And, but yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's a great bit of advice for our listeners, is to create a great culture via having, you know, the right vision, mission statement. Where is the company going? I mean, for me, one of the areas that was non-negotiable was my value towards being on time. That was number one. Reliability. Say you're going to do something, fucking do it. Say you're going to be there at 7 o'clock, make sure you're there at 7 o'clock, unless there's been a death or something that might stop you from doing it. So that was always a big one for me. It was a non-negotiable, and that went through the culture of the company. You know, my team knew that I didn't tolerate being late. And you know, it's crazy. I'm sure you've got friends, as I do, that have no idea, have no concept whatsoever of being on time. You know, you arrange to go out and you tell them it's 7, and then they get there at 7:30, like, oh, it's not that, we're not that late. I say, Try that with the airlines,
Yeah.
Their flight's leaving at 7 o'clock, you rock up at 7:30, you're not gonna make it. So, but yeah, it's funny, certain values that we need to run a successful company. That's great advice, TJ. Now, we're getting towards the end, and I think this has been fantastic. We've sort of covered a few things that I feel are important, and I know there's a lot more that we can share, because we both have many years of the school of hard knocks, right? So I like to finish every podcast with what book you're reading at the moment. What is it that you've, and I know that you're an avid reader just like me. So what book that you would recommend to our listeners, and maybe tell us a little bit about that?
Man, so right now I'm in the midst of two. But I'm going to go to one.
No pressure, mate.
No, you're good. I'm just trying to think of which one of. So
just giving you a bit of a hurry up.
Yeah, it's like I'm on the Oscars and my time is up to thank people. So I typically only read books that are books that'll like help with something, right? Either I'm learning or I'm getting better or improving, things of that nature. Or biographies or things of that nature. I don't really read a lot of fiction. But there's a book that is out by Matthew Perry. So he played Chandler in Friends. And it's called Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. And this is a hard book to get through if you're an empath. Like if you really have a servant's heart and you feel what other people feel, and this is a hard book to get through, because the amount of rawness and realness that Matthew shares from his life, of some things that he went through, is pretty tremendous. And the one thing that I continue to take away from it is, but look where he is. Regardless of everything that he went through, struggled with, but look where he is, right? And so I think it's relevant today for our contracting friends, right? Because here it is, it's March 20th. Now, I don't know about you, but what I'm starting to see a shift in our calendar. And it's a shift by almost a month in weather. And so where February was historically one way, now March is historically more that way than what it was. It's slow every year in February. It happens every single year, and we all act like the sky is falling. We all want to fire our digital marketers. We all go through it. And now it's maybe more into March. But look where you'll be in June and July. It'll happen. And so choose which monster inside your mind you're going to feed, right? Are you going to feed Chicken Little running around telling everybody the sky is falling? Or are you going to feed, Tom Brady or Joe Montana in your mind that has ice water running through their veins, that we're going to be fine. We're going to get through this. Because here's what I will tell you: the slow times expose the weaknesses of a business. And so if you're slow and you're noticing things that aren't as great as they could be for your business, stop looking at them as though that's a penalization, and start looking at them as a gift, which is what they are, because you also have the time to address them right now. Stop being a victim. Stop saying, woe is me. Start looking at those things and going, all right, we got to get to work. We got to fix this stuff. And if you don't have the ability to do that, then reach out. You've got Alan, you've got myself, you've got, many resources, Service Roundtable that you mentioned, EGIA that we mentioned. Like there's no shortage of some really, really good resources in our space to go get the help. But just stop running around like the sky's falling. It's not falling.
Love it, TJ. That I'm definitely going to look up that book. I listen to probably 80% of the books. I like to read, but it tends to put me to sleep. So I try not to read while I'm driving. So I like to listen to books while I'm in the gym or working out or whatever, walking. So I find that listening to books, but I'm a pretty slow learner. I have to listen to the book a couple of times to actually to get the most out of it. So that's a good recommendation. But look, yes, those that have been in business for any period of time know that when you're going to be busy and when you're going to be quiet. And something I brought up in a coaching call last week with my group. I said, when's the best time to market your business? And no one said anything. I said, the best time to market your business is when you're fucking busy. Okay? Because we know it doesn't stay busy forever. That's when you really need to get cracking, because any marketing we do now can have a lag of, it might take 4 to 6 weeks before you actually get traction on it, depending on what you're doing. And usually when it's quiet, it's too late. You've missed the boat. It's a bit like the whole plant the seed in, it's a bit like the farmer. He knows he needs to plant the seed at a certain time, and everything has its place. So yes, for those that are quiet when in the slow season, it's really due to the lack of action taken when you were busy. So, but look, I'll end it at that. That's a great recommendation. I really want to thank you for your time. You add a lot of value to the industry, and what I'll do is when we post this podcast, I'll put all your contact details, unless you want to give out anything now before we conclude. But I want to thank you again, TJ. And I might just let you finish up, maybe give out some contact details and on how our listeners can reach you, and then we'll close this off, right?
Yeah, sure enough. And Alan, thanks again for continued friendship and continued discussions. This is how we get better. And man, I appreciate you introducing me to your audience, and then also Flywheel folks. Alan is a tremendous resource. So if you've not had interaction with Alan, I would highly encourage that you look him up. Alan Ferguson's a great guy. He's been in the industry a long time, and much like me, has done a lot really well and has done a lot and made mistakes. And those mistakes are what I think have made us who we are today. So, so I appreciate being on. But yeah, it's website would be Flywheel CG, flywheelcoachinggroup.com. You can go to flywheelcg.com. Email is tj@flywheelcg.com. And we'll save the cell phone stuff for a later date. But by all means, any questions, we do have a private Facebook page that you can look up, Flywheel for Home Services. And just, always looking to serve and share, no strings attached. I really, truly do believe that every time we help somebody, we elevate that industry just a little bit more and kind of help be a person that's a catalyst to stopping the race to the bottom.
Thanks, TJ. Fantastic. Appreciate your time. I really appreciate everything you do. And thank you for our listeners again for joining us on this podcast sponsored by Service Success Academy. All right, take care and thanks again.